All right, Aljamain Sterling, welcome to your own podcast studio.
Thanks for having me. It's my
How does
honor.
it feel to not be cutting to 135 pounds?
It feels good not cutting down to 135 pounds. It's like a good weight off my shoulders. No pun intended. Um, 10 extra pounds is a lot. I think I speak for most athletes, wrestlers, anyone who's actually cut weight before that knows exactly what I'm talking about. The toll that it takes mentally, physically, and for your performances that you would like to have, that 10 extra pounds is going to be a world of a difference, I think, for my future fights.
After taking a proper vacation, I know that's not something you were able to get before your last fight. How do you feel like mentally, physically, spiritually?
I mean, now after taking a vacation, I feel so good. I feel like I just feel refreshed, refined, like rejuvenated. I think that's the best way I could put the feeling. People don't understand the mental toll that fighting actually takes from the preparation standpoint and how much goes into it. Like I beat myself up mentally. The things that I think about, the possibilities, the outcomes, winning, losing, the financial aspect, planning regular everyday life things around that, wedding planning that had to get put on hold again. Um, so after that Henry fight, going into the O'Malley fight, I was looking forward to having some type of break to kind of just reset. Obviously, I had a big weight cut again to get down for the Henry fight, and being able to have that vacation just made me feel brand new. I'm like happy to be in the gym, and I think that's the most important part. I think a lot of guys, you gotta want to be there, and I felt like I was just kind of going through the motions. Yeah, I did a good job in preparing, like physically, but I felt mentally I just wasn't all there to compete. And I think now, even people are saying in the gym, it's nice to see me smiling a lot more, which is it's funny to hear because I don't think about it when I'm in the moment when I'm cutting weight and getting prepared for a fight because I'm just so locked in and entrenched. And of course, making 135, there's not a whole lot to laugh about because it's such a big weight cut. So now that vacation, going up 10 pounds, I think all that together just makes a happier individual and has me motivated and excited to be back out there and competing.
What have the differences been in training in terms of how you feel from the last two camps to this camp? And I say the last two camps because you had to do those pretty much back to back. Like there was like a month break between, and you there was the weight cut was insane. So how do you feel your performance is, and how do you feel how do you feel in this camp?
Even to say that I had a month break, that was a month to just recover my legs from all the kicking I did in the fight against Henry. And I think a lot of people overlook that. They say, yeah, you signed a contract. I'm like, yeah, I signed a contract because a green carrot was dangled in front of my face. The illusion of a green carrot. Because as I've openly stated, like, that money wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And had I have known that, obviously hindsight's 2020, I would have gladly just gone on my vacation, took my reset, and just see what happens in the next time. So ultimately, it left me in a position where the better man won that night, who was more prepared, more dialed in, and more focused. So hats off to O'Malley with that. So now for me, I feel better just training. I'm happier training. Um, the motivation is there, and I think that's the difference between these two training camps. These three training camps, I should say. The Henry fight was highly motivated, and I think the O'Malley fight was more motivated by money than it was the victory, and I think that's the difference. Being motivated to win because of what it means for legacy and things like that versus just a bag of money. Obviously to fight for money is cool. This is what we do it for, but I think when I'm more focused on the objective, the goal, I think it's a more dangerous version of myself.
So speaking of legacy, how much is this move up to featherweight motivated by adding notches to your legacy and versus like other motivating factors earlier in your career that you might have been motivated by?
Well, my career has always been motivated by legacy, in my opinion. I don't think, like we always knew, like we always say fighters know, like within the UFC, if you get the belt, the money will come. That's essentially the moniker that people will always say. If you get the belt, the money will come. But for me, it was all about competition. I come from a wrestling background where we competed over and over, week after week, and There was no payments at the end of that. We cut weight, did all that for the love of the sport, and that's pretty much what I got into the sport for, the love of the sport. The money was just icing on the cake. To be able to do this full time, not have any worries in the world. I was a professional athlete while I was in college, finishing my degree, and it gave me an opportunity to use that moment in time to pursue something that I wasn't sure would be any type of financial gain. It was just something I enjoyed doing. It was kind of a hobby. So now the motivation is the legacy, especially at this point in my career. To go up to another weight class, to get a win in another weight class in the UFC. I've done it on the regional circuit, but to do it in the UFC, I think that's a much different thing. And against a guy like Calvin Kattar, I think that's a crazy big way to introduce myself to a brand new weight class and to remind the world who I am and what I'm capable of.
What would the win against Calvin Kattar mean to you? Like, what does that symbolize for your career at this stage?
I think a win over Calvin Kattar just symbolizes that I'm one of the best in the world, not because of my size. I'm one of the best in the world because of my fight IQ. I think I'm one of the best in the world beating a guy like Calvin Kattar, who's fought and beaten some of the best guys in that division. I think that symbolizes that I can become a double champ, that I can go out there and fight for a belt again and make some more history. And I think that's what it's all about. For me, it's just chasing the stats, chasing the goal. And at the end of the day, the money comes with it. That, the money's always nice, but I'm going in there to compete. I'm going in there to win. I'm going there to make history. I'm going in there to show that I'm one of the best in the world, and there's no accident by how I've gotten here. And I'm doing this for all the people out there who see a little version of themselves in me, and it's just showing them that no matter what people say, you can always do things that you put your mind to.
Do you feel like you have something to prove with this fight? And I want to add an interesting wrinkle to this. Calvin is another long, lanky striker. I don't want to say he's exactly like Sean, but he does have some similarities in his style to Sean, who your last fight was against. Do you feel like this fight is a chance to prove the way the last fight ended, a one-off, and you can compete against guys like that and even bigger guys like that and still get it done?
Yeah, I definitely think I could compete against guys that size, that range, that length, guys with good footwork. I kind of embody that style of using a lot of footwork. And I don't think Sean had a fluke night. We always say that ratio 9 out of 10 times, and that was the one time. In my personal, humble opinion, I really think that was the 1 out of 10 times you stacked the deck against me in a way. And people are going to say, well, we didn't force you to sign the contract. I'm like, but let's call a spade a spade. One guy took off 10 and a half months to prepare to fight me. I had to be forced to turn around or was forced to sit and wait possibly 9 to 10 months to compete again and not make any money. So it's a devil on the shoulder, wait and sit out, not compete for a very, very long time where I want to be active, and me asking for an extra month to prepare for a fight that I can turn around for, but I just need a little bit more time to properly prepare, properly get the right partners, and be in the right mental mind state to compete after having a little bit of time to kind of decompress. And now here's another opportunity for me to fight another long, rangy guy again. I think it gives me an opportunity to show, like, yeah, I had an off night. Even if I don't win against Calvin, I think the performance just being better overall will just show that I had an off night. And I think that's what it's all about for me. And I don't need to prove nothing to nobody. It's more for myself. This is what I want to prove to myself. Like, I know what it is already, but I would like to go out with a better performance than I did on the last one. And I think that's what it's more about for me. It's the performance that matters the most. And I always said to myself, if I perform the way I perform in the gym, usually it's a good night for me. And I'm hoping I could go out there, get back in the win column at UFC 300, and show the world that Aljamain Sterling is still here and a main contender to the belt.
How do you feel like your training camp is going right now? Like, how are you performing in sparring? How does your body feel? Do you feel stronger at this weight? Tell us how you feel.
At this weight, I feel so much better. I feel training camp's been going really well. I've been sparring with a lot of different guys, different body types, trying to get guys that are good strikers like Calvin, long, rangy, trying to get them to be as honest as possible for me. And when I say that, keep me honest. Make me know when I'm out of range and counter me when you can counter me. Stop the takedowns when you can stop the takedowns. Don't just let me have my way with certain positions. And I think explaining that to them beforehand and then actually being able to go out there and still do what I want to do, it lets me know I'm in a really good spot. And even earlier in this camp, I was on antibiotics, and I think the sparring was really well for being at a lesser version of myself. And then once I got off the antibiotics, I was able to kind of push even harder. And I think that's such a good thing for me mentally, because you're not always going to be at your best on fight night, right? It's like sometimes we have to know that we're going to have some issues that come up on fight day. Hopefully not. Hopefully you have the best day possible, and even then you might not win. And sometimes you could have the shittiest day going for you, and you go out there and have the best performance of your life. So for me to mentally be able to prepare for a sparring session and get through it in a good way while I'm not feeling the greatest, and then doing it while I do feel good and having good sessions, I think it just lets me know we're putting in good quality work. And I'm pumped to show the world what I could do at 145. I think when I get my hands on Calvin, it's going to be a very surprise. A lot of people are saying that if O'Malley was able to put me out, what is a bigger guy going to do that hits harder and cater? And I always say you can't hit what you can't touch. And I think that's going to be the name of the game, the theme of the fight. I'm going to try to make it look as close to the Max Holloway fight as possible. And, of course, I'm going to use my wrestling where I need to use my wrestling, and I think that's going to be the difference in this fight.
How do you think this fight week will differ than your past fight weeks when you had the belt or were fighting for the belt? One, considering the point you're at in your career now, and two, considering it's a 3-round fight with a much less drastic weight cut. So how do you think all that is going to look for fight week?
I really don't know what fight week is going to look like. I haven't cut down to 145 pounds, and then put the weight back on to know how big I'm going to be. I'm hoping that after the weight cut, I could get up to at least 162. That would be ideal. I think that's an optimal weight for me. I'm not really worried about the weight cut, which is kind of crazy because I talk to all these other featherweights and they talk about how much they get to, and it's like saying how hard it is for them. I'm like, man, if that's hard for you, imagine what it's like for me getting down to 35. My DEXA scan came back at 147 I think 0.1 or 0.6 pounds. So imagine me getting down to 135 pounds time after time for the past 5 years. And that's when I said I've been kind of noticing the difference in my training sessions. I've been noticing the difference in my fights. So fight week now, I think I'm going to be a lot happier. I'm not going to be as moody. I'm going to have more energy. I think I could be a bit more productive, and I can enjoy the process a little bit more. The same way I did in the beginning of my career in the UFC, where I wasn't cutting as much weight to get down to 135. And that's what I'm most excited about, to see what that whole thing is going to look like. It's going to be foreign. It's going to be different. And I have to make sure that I'm doing everything the right way and being as dialed in as possible, and wait for those bright lights and go out there and just have some fun.
You've talked about this before, how those last 10 pounds of your weight cut are typically where you feel that you're losing the most ability to perform. Obviously, this time you aren't going to have those last 10 pounds. So how do you think that's going to reflect in your performance?
I think not losing those extra 10 pounds is going to show in my conditioning. I think I'm going to be able to push a hard 15 minutes the way I do in the training room. And I think that's the Energizer Bunny I want to get back to. The guy who was in there with Pedro Munoz went tooth and nail with him for 15 minutes in an all stand-up affair, not even using any of my wrestling, more so using it to set up the strikes. And obviously I had the wrist surgery, so I couldn't even rely on my wrestling as much as I would have liked to in a fight against a guy like that, because he's so dangerous on the feet. But then just get back to the cardio, Augusto Mendez, the Renan Barão, fights like that where I'm literally just going and going and going. So now people saw that and thought that I had good conditioning at 135 during my reign as a champion. Now I think people are going to be happy and pleasantly surprised to see what my conditioning looks like at this weight class as well. And we're pushing a pretty damn good hard pace. So I feel like I'm able to keep the tempo, stay in this guy's face the entire time, make him miss, get him frustrated, make him have to fend off takedowns. Then when he's defending takedowns, have to look out for the strikes. And then if he gets too overzealous with the strikes, now I get to take him down. So there's a lot of ways for me to win this fight. A lot of things I'm excited about for this fight, and I'm excited to show the world a new version of Aljamain Sterling.
Any predictions for how this fight's gonna go?
Calvin Kattar's a tough dude. I don't really foresee myself finishing him in the first round unless I can get to his back really early. If I have to make a prediction, I'm going to say second round submission. I think I get him out there with the submission and possibly an anaconda choke. We'll see. I just want to get on his neck any way that I can. I think I could get an anaconda choke and I could put him away. And even if I don't get the anaconda, I think he lets me get to his neck, guillotine, anaconda choke, Darce choke. But I think if I could get the anaconda choke, I think it's going to be a very hard way for him to get out. And I think that's going to be my key to victory.
All right. Aljamain Sterling. Featherweight contender.
Featherweight contender. Sounds good.